Hi, I'm Larry Letich. Welcome to The Art of Feeling. In the spring of 1963, Dr. No, the very first James Bond movie, was released, and I got to see it. I was 8 years old, and I don't remember much about it except that the last 30 minutes were so unbearably suspenseful for me, I was literally eating my hat. But what most penetrated my 8-year-old mind and stayed there was the movie's beginning. In the first 15 minutes, the incredibly beautiful, rich, and sophisticated Sylvia Trench, the first Bond girl, meets Bond in a high-class European casino and practically throws herself at him in his hotel room. And he didn't have to do a thing. All he had to do was be Bond. Like I said, I was 8. I sure as hell didn't know exactly what they were going to do together, but I got the message. This guy was the real deal. He had what women wanted. And what was that? Well, Bond was always cool. Not cool as in he's cool, and not cool as in cold. He was calm. He was unfazed. He always had his act together. He was suave and debonair. He could handle anything thrown at him. And he was unafraid. Unafraid of death, unafraid of pain, unafraid of rejection. He was never vulnerable. No matter what happened to him, in the end, he was totally and completely self-sufficient and in control. He needed no one. I, of course, was none of those things, not at 8 or 18 or 28. I was short and shy and unathletic and very easily hurt. Suave and debonair and in control? Not a chance. And through my teens and 20s, Bond would loom in the background of my mind as everything I should be and wasn't. When you get right down to it, James Bond is such an iconic example of manhood because of just 3 attributes. He's totally in control, he fights bad guys and wins, and he practically never ever feels pain or fear or vulnerability. Some version of him is practically baked into our consciousness as men. He starts to appear inside of us in some form around the age of 4. He surrounds us in every expectation we and others have about how we're supposed to be. He's like the air we breathe, ubiquitous and invisible. To a certain degree, he's even encoded in our genes. And under the surface, practically all of us buy into him more than we admit and measure ourselves against him. Bond and all the others like him are exemplars of the male code. What is the male code? It's the unspoken imperative that you should do everything in your power to eliminate in yourself fear, pain, weakness, and vulnerability. The guy who does this best is the guy who wins the manhood contest and gets the prizes. Conversely, to feel or, God forbid, express these contemptible emotions is a sign of weakness and failure. Yeah. Why would men aspire so much to be like this? What do they really get out of it? People these days talk as if masculinity has only negative traits, but there's at least one aspect of the male code that's powerfully life-giving and life-supporting. It includes an innate drive to be strong, fearless, and yes, callous enough to do whatever it takes to protect those you love from any external threat, at whatever cost to yourself. And why would we have that drive? Why are men generally less sensitive to physical pain and more conditioned to deny physical pain than women? You could claim it's cultural, but why then is it so universal? There's a valid and surprising evolutionary reason. When it comes to survival of the species, we males are more expendable. You can lose a lot of males and the population can keep growing. But lose too many females, especially females with offspring, and a species can head to extinction. When baboon troops cross the savannah, they move in close groups, with the fully grown but young males on the periphery to fend off predators, often sacrificing themselves in the process. Sound familiar? And men, have you ever wondered why it's just assumed that you're the one to take out the garbage? Or fix the toilet? Or empty the RV tank? Here's a fun fact. A 2021 survey found that only 5% of plumbers are women. It also found that 91.1% are men. That leaves 3.8% unaccounted for. That means there are only slightly more women plumbers than there are ones who are... Why do men do all the really gross jobs? And why are girls and women generally far more creeped out by insects and rodents than boys and men? Pathogens. Before antibiotics and vaccines, infections and infectious diseases killed more people by far than anything else. Women who hated, feared, and avoided these things that might carry pathogens, including mice and bugs, were more likely to live long enough to raise their children to adulthood, and they passed on their antipathies in their genes to their daughters. But men aren't needed for protection against only germs and predators. The biggest thing they're protected against, of course, is other men. Male intergroup and intragroup conflict and violence goes way, way back. And it's not capitalism, and it's not colonialism, and it's not patriarchy. In the 70s, it was discovered that male chimps, our closest relatives, ambush, make war on, and massacre other groups of chimps. It sucks, but obviously it was a successful evolutionary strategy. For almost the entire length of human existence, might made right, and the vast majority of men lived in constant threat of violent death. Most of us don't realize this, but we men today are about 20 times safer from violent attack and death than any men in human history. Steven Pinker exhaustively documented this fact in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. But this legacy of danger and violence lives inside of us. It starts by the time we're 8 or 9. Most of us deliberately toughen ourselves up, cultivating emotional calluses in order to tolerate more pain without showing it or getting stopped by it. And if you're temperamentally unable, like I was, to pull that off, you probably felt ashamed. And it doesn't matter if you have the most emotionally supportive, gender-neutral parents in the world. In boy world, even looking like you might be afraid, or worse, cry, feels like a social disaster. It's an invitation to be ridiculed and ostracized by your friends and attacked by bullies ready to roll over you. 10 or 15 years go by and you feel like you're smart and aware and you try hard not to be a jerk, but you still feel like revealing your emotions is about as attractive as a dirty diaper. And you can't help but notice that the guys with the most dates are the guys who, guess what? Act cool and strong. Our whole society, women included, is completely confused right now about what to expect from men. It used to be so simple. Protect and provide. That's what men did. But what's our role now if our partner could be making a bigger paycheck than we do? And the closest we'll ever get to being a protector, unless we're a police officer or go into the military, is playing Call of Duty? Fast forward a few more years. Now you're in a committed long-term relationship. One day, something awful happens to the two of you. A death, a lost job. Now you feel like you gotta be strong. Maybe like your wife or girlfriend expects you or needs you to be strong. But what if you don't feel strong? Then you do what the male code tells you to do. If you can't feel strong, don't feel anything. Cut off your feelings. Even if in the process you go silent and pull away. But what about anger? Men are often accused of channeling all their feelings into anger. Well, a lot of men do. And it's true that men generally are hardwired to have strong feelings of anger and aggression. But the truth is, the typical American guy is afraid of his feelings of anger and aggression, and for good reason. They don't go over very well. Unless you're some alpha male multimillionaire CEO SOB, getting angry and aggressive is almost always a losing strategy at home, in the workplace, and on the street. The end result is that a lot of us end up not able to let down our guard and feel open and tender and intimate except during sex, or else when we're with our littlest children or grandchildren. The rest of the time we're emotionally closed off and disconnected from other people and a stranger to ourselves. The trouble with the male code is that it's not designed to give you a long and happy life. Being disconnected from your emotions eventually drains your energy and burns you out. It makes men old and fossilized by the time they're in their 50s, and way too alone. But there's no good reason for men to live anymore by the male code. Men have sound physiological and cultural reasons to feel differently than women, like crying less, but they're every bit as capable of being emotionally connected to themselves and other people. As crazy as the world seems to be getting lately, the cultural rules against men connecting with their emotions are beginning to break down. Not only that, today, becoming emotionally connected, being able to experience, understand, and express your emotions authentically to strengthen your relationships and gain support is a valuable skill for the 21st century. And you can consciously develop it. It's a strength that makes you more emotionally resilient and flexible. I'll tell you what else letting go of the male code does. It gives you freedom. It lets you relax into your own skin. Because the male code doesn't exist to help you anyway. It's a code forged by your genes to help you pass them on in a pre-industrial or post-apocalyptic world where you and your kin are lucky to live to 30. But that's not where you or I or any of us live. Let's stop prepping to live in a world that no longer exists. Let's stop rooting for the apocalypse. Let's keep the good stuff of the male code and jettison the rest and start living and feeling and connecting and allowing ourselves to be men who are simply human.